Buenas noches a todos los que nos están viendo. Gracias por sintonizar nuevamente este Nights of Horrors. Nights of Horrors, aquí abajo está el nombre con dos S, S en Nights, al final de Nights, S al final de Horrors. Canal que es para todos los que les guste el horror, los que sean amantes del horror como yo y como la persona que voy a presentar. He mencionado anteriormente y lo menciono nuevamente, mi nombre es José Castillo, para el que no me conoce, Cheo, así me llaman, Cheo. Y una de las pasiones que tengo es las casas de misterio. Me encanta esta época de Halloween y pues qué mejor que comenzar estos capítulos, estos episodios de Casas de Horrores que hablando con una persona que estuvo detrás de las máscaras, una persona que fue el scare actor, que en español sería como actor de horror o algo parecido. Vamos hoy a hablar con una persona que ha tenido larga experiencia en esto y lo ha vivido de primera mano y nos va a contar o vamos a tratar de profundizar cómo es que se siente. Para que sepan, él tiene su nena ahí cerca, o si lo ven de momento como mirar para el lado y eso, que está con su nena, pero aquí estamos. Los dejo aquí con Joshua Rivera. Josh, si nos puedes explicar un poco de ti y cómo empieza esa pasión por el horror. Vamos a empezar por ahí.
For me, I'm in the military, so I moved around a lot. So when I was, younger, for me, my mom wasn't really into it. We really didn't dress up, so there was that curiosity of what is it, what is it, what is it, what is it? This it looks cool. Why can't we do it? Trick or treating and things like that. And then I had an opportunity because my grandmother would take me all the time. She'd take me. What do you want? Let me pick costumes, and I would go and trick or treat. With the cousins and everybody, and it was fun. It was a time to change up, right? Because every day you get up and you have your routine. I get up, I put my uniform on, I do my job. It was a chance to relax, get out of my skin, be something else, be somewhere else, do something else, live in that fantasy that everyone wants to live in. So that's how that started going. And then I went to, it was like a haunted hayride. And I was
Okay,
going
right.
through, and I sat there, and it was in Connecticut, and we went in and we sat, and it was like kind of like it breaks down, right? So you have to get off and you have to help push, and then that's when the creatures start coming, because it's like,
Oh,
oh
wow.
no, and then they start coming out because on both sides it has cornfield, right? So you
Okay.
can't see nothing, and then you just hear right, and you're like, oh man, what's going on? And I was had to be like 8, and like just these huge scarecrow looking
Very close.
guys start coming out, and you're like, what's going on? And at first I was like frozen, just like deer in a headlight, and then I'm really scared, and then they're like, it's okay, don't worry. And he came up to me, and he like got down on one knee and started talking to me and said, don't worry, like, we're good, we're just here to have fun. And that really got me going. I'm like, all right, they're normal people, this is a job, they're doing it, and that it made me feel comfortable
Ok,
and
vamos,
good.
vamos, vamos, disculpa que te interrumpa, pero es que quiero cada detalle ahí. Dijiste algo bien importante y nosotros lo habíamos hablado antes de la entrevista cuando nos comunicamos. So, la parte que tú me contaste de lo de niño, no fue
Hmm.
que tú lo hiciste con un niño, fue que a ti te pasó cuando tú eras niño.
No, both. So
Los dos.
yeah,
¿Nos
so
puedes
because
contar un
they did
poquito
that.
de eso? Por
Yeah,
favor.
so when I was little, right, it was scary, it was new to me, and because of that scarer, that monster, that person, when they came up to me and talked to me, you know, they stepped out of character a little bit just to be like, "Hey, little guy, it's cool. Don't worry. I'm normal. I'm a person." You know, that right there made me feel good about it. So when I started in the business and I started doing that, right, you get so many people that come through. I worked in Hawaii. I did it for 8 years. Haunted Plantation. It's a big one. It still goes on every year, all the time, and you get, I mean, loads and loads and loads of people to the point where we have to close gates because it's just lines and lines and lines. And you got people who want to go. There's people who really want to go and they bring their kids and they're interested. And then there's people who want to go but their kids are scared, but they still bring them because they want to still have the experience or whatever, right? So you get all ages, shapes, sizes, cultures coming in. And over there, especially with the cultures that are there, they're really big. And now the Haunted Plantation itself, where we were at, it already had a history of being haunted, right?
Oh, ok, ok.
So,
Ok, vamos a hacer algo. Gracias, porque eso quiero llegar. Pero antes de llegar allá, te quiero hacer dos preguntas. Una, ¿tú piensas que un actor de miedo o un scare actor, como se conoce, se puede salir de papel? ¿Es bueno que se salga de papel? ¿Sí o no y por qué?
I mean, yeah, right. So you can do it, but still keep it together, if that makes sense, right? You
Yeah.
don't have to demask, right? Because for mine, you seen the picture I sent you, right? That
Yeah.
was one whole thing that probably went to down to here. So there was no taking it off. Once it was
Right,
on, it
right,
was
right, right.
on, right? But there's an approach you do. There's an aura, right? Because I'm not coming raw, jump scare coming at you. I'm slowing down. I get down to one knee. I bring it down, and now I'm eye to eye level, right? So now the
Right.
kid can see me in some light, preferably if I
Yes.
can, right? So they can see like, oh wait, I can see a little bit of his eye, right? Because at this point, you got eyeliner. I think it runs a little bit, but you can see like it doesn't connect fully. I can see his eyes. His eyes tell me a story. His eyes make him real. He's a person. He's not a
Perfecto.
monster completely.
Perfecto.
And then you,
Eso, vamos ahora, ¿cómo llega George de apasionarle? Porque ya vemos cómo te empezó a apasionar el miedo y tu historia es parecida. Yo cuando pequeño conté que yo vi una casa de horror, en mi caso no fue un Hellride, que Hellride, para los que no sepan, es este tipo de atracción de horror donde tú te montas como en esta
tractor.
máquina que usa un tractor atrás y entonces el tractor va bien lento y tú vas por los woods y por los corn maze y todo eso y de ahí te salen cosas que es excelente. En mi caso fue de una casa de embrujada típica, la de la feria, que tienen el carrito que vira bien rápido y eso. Eso te llamó la atención y me mencionaste que cuando salieron los monstruos y todo eso, al tú ver lo distinto que era de nuestro día a día, tú dijiste, espérate, aquí hay algo diferente. ¿Cómo tú pasas de empezarte a gustar todo eso a tú decidir o ver qué fue lo que te llamó la atención que tú dijiste, I want to be a scare actor?
Uh, I think for me, it all started with the books, like Goosebumps, and I don't know if you guys have seen it. Are You Afraid of the Dark? It used to be a TV
Sí,
show
sí, sí,
on,
sí,
and that was like every Sunday, just hearing those stories, right? Because you immerse yourselves in these characters. For me, I had a real big imagination, so reading the books, the TV shows, I'm like, man, I want to be in that, like these characters. Like I like that,
yeah,
you know. So from that, I grew into it, and then I did acting in high school, and then I became a theater major in college, which
wow,
is how I got into the business. I wasn't really thinking about it at the time, right? You know, college hours, just trying to keep a job, things like that. Partying. What college kids do. And Noah is his name. Just came into one of our classes that we were having, and he knew our acting teacher. So after the class, he saw some of our stuff that we were doing, and he said, "Hey, I'm trying to open up a scare, you know, just something to run, right? I'm trying to make because he has many businesses, and that was one of the things he has a passion for it." And I was like, this big sell was, hey, you can put it on your acting resume, and that's what I was thinking, right? I'm all right, something to add
right,
on my resume, right? So I was like, cool, I'll do it. You know, I get to dress up, I get to act, boom. It's and then, but initially he didn't tell us it was gonna be a scaring job. He just said,
okay,
hey, I'm trying to get a couple actors to put together
Para
and
algo,
film,
para
yeah,
algo.
just to film some stuff. And we're like, all right, cool, no big deal. And then he took us. It was really funny because he took us to the plantation, and then we had just went through it, just a normal tour, but he did a night tour. So he set the stage up because you walk through and you're like, man, this place is a little creepy. We walk it, and then at the end you're like, all right, that's cool, Noah. Like, why'd you do that? And he's like, this is gonna be your stage. This is
Y
where I want to set
Plantation,
up.
¿me puedes describir un poquito el Plantation para los que no saben qué es? Es
Plantation is like a farm,
como una
right?
granja o algo
Yeah,
así.
it's
Okay.
kind of like a farm, but just smaller and closed, and it's a community that lives there.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's not
So,
just like one little person; it's a community.
it's
They live
community.
together. Yep.
Para los que están viendo, que sepan, Plantation es el Haunted Attraction que George, en el cual George trabajó. ¿Por cuántos años fue que trabajaste ahí, George?
8 años.
8 años. Vamos a llegar a eso y vamos a llegar a ver cómo él se desenvuelve y todo ahí. Pero él está contándonos cómo fue el approach que le dio la primera oportunidad. Entonces, esta persona que es ahora el dueño, correcto, de ese lugar, le hace el approach porque va a la escuela donde tú estudiabas actuación y está buscando actores para algo que ustedes no sabían qué era.
Just another
Y
job
entonces
or opportunity.
los llevó por el día a ver el Plantation y después los llevó por la noche. Tú te diste cuenta que habían dos cosas distintas de cómo se veía por el día por la noche. Ahora te pregunto, ¿esa área ya estaba preparada o todavía no para ese momento?
No, just as is. It just had
Okay.
a whole aura, and even when we did put on the show and performed, we really didn't change anything about it. They opened up some of the houses so you can walk through, and probably the back farmhouse the first year we made it a little bit like we may have added one or two strobe lights to some of the houses and then added caution tape just so people knew where to walk.
Okay.
But other than that,
yo creo que eso es una perfecta idea cuando uno no tiene nada para trazar el camino, poner caution tape, lleva donde quiere llevarse, eso es excelente. Entonces cuando él lo lleva ahí, y ya como que lo estoy visualizando cómo es y la idea yo creo que desde el principio está brutal porque si coges un lugar que supuestamente está haunted, ya tú tienes un paso adelante, no hay mucho que hacer después de eso.
I tell you, like, they told us stories about it, the plantation owners, and you're like, but there's times at night, especially when we perform, they'll tell you look up, and you look up in certain buildings, it looked like there was people in there, but these houses are supposed to be empty.
Wow.
There was a lady that supposedly lived and died in the house right out front where I worked, and if you looked up at the attic, you would see a silhouette of a lady standing there, and I'm like, and that house was locked up. No one went in it, and it would go away. Yeah.
Wow. Entonces, ¿qué sucede después de que él los lleva a donde usted y le dice, this is going to be your stage? ¿Cuál es su reacción? ¿Qué tú pensaste? ¿Tú dijiste, espérate, esto es lo que yo quería? ¿O tú dijiste, espérate?
Yeah, I honestly, and it was a group of people that were into it already. Like, we talked about doing things, but the excitement when we found out, we were just hype, right? He came to us and he said, hey, look, I don't have much. I don't have a lot of props. I don't have stuff. It's just going to be us, and I want to try it. And we were like, absolutely, absolutely, and it was the excitement because I think there was there was the Haunted Lagoon, which you basically got on like some little boat, and then like they had like a girl come out of the water and like she slid towards you and then went back down. It was that was it. It had like one jump scare, but other than that, you were just in a little ride that had a lot of fog machines and
Okay.
So there was nothing else really out there. So to have the opportunity, because his goal was to set the stage. He didn't want, monsters or things coming to grab you or scare you. He didn't want to use fog machines and sounds and lights. He wanted
natural.
Yes, that's what he wanted. He wanted natural talent to make it feel real. So you felt like I'm really going through a plantation, and I'm really the main character, because his goal, it didn't matter how long it took. We'd probably work till 3, 4 in the morning sometimes, because we wouldn't let groups more than like 5, maybe 6 go at one time, so that way you had the experience. You weren't like a bunch of you at once, and then you're just like, oh, I can hear the group behind me.
Qué bueno que lo menciona, porque es que hay tantos factores que podemos hablar aquí por siempre. Y yo estoy presintiendo que nosotros vamos a tener ya por lo menos 2 episodios de esta entrevista, porque esto está buenísimo. Entonces ya, porque hay una cosa y eso lo podemos hablar más adelante, pero una cosa que es interesante es ver desde el punto de vista de un scare actor. ¿Tú entiendes que es mejor este tipo de casas donde entran muchas personas a la vez, o es mejor donde entren grupos limitados? Yo creo que yo sé la contestación, pero te pregunto por saber.
So right, I've been through both, right? I've been through where they separated. I think the way he did it was really good. The way we did it was the separation, because you get the full effect.
Right.
So it was long enough away where you would still hear, and that's what helped the effect, right? You would still hear the group that went before you. You would still hear their screaming. So it wasn't a recorded scream. It wasn't sound box. It was actual people screaming. So you were like, oh, I'm not even there yet. Like,
he's coming.
Yeah. The screams were all over, because we had it. The way it was set up was you would come in, and basically you would do a giant loop, right? You would do a U through it, right? You would cut through the houses, hit the back farmhouse, come out, and then come through the cornfields. So you would hear screams ahead of you and then screams to the right of you. So that sound effect with the houses blocking, it just echoed. So you didn't know where the screams were coming. So you didn't know if it was coming now, if it was coming later, what's coming up.
O si fue lo que ya pasó.
Yep. And the thing is, we were just we mingled in well. He didn't have us. It wasn't like, you're here and you can't move from here. You're here. He said, no, walk it, explore it. So
tú no tienes como un espacio asignado a ti, o tal vez lo tenías, pero tú tienes la facilidad de moverte.
Yes, we had our places where we're like, hey, these are good for this, this, and this. And we would change it up, like, hey, let's try this, and certain guys would switch.
Yo creo que eso es excelente. ¿Tú sabes por qué? Porque cuando tú haces eso, no necesariamente este grupo va a tener el mismo efecto que este.
Yes, that's exactly. Everyone had their own personalized experience.
¿Cómo llega si él lo fue a buscar? Ustedes no pasaron por un proceso de casting.
Yes, so the first year we all did it, it was kind of just Noah, and his parents are big in it too. So it was just Noah, his dad, and his mom. Okay. And you kind of you talk through it, and hey, what's the passion? His goal, he wanted people who had passion, right?
Yeah.
And then the next year after that, because that first year, we were probably going to do it like 1, maybe 2 days. We ended up doing it for like almost 2 weeks, because people were just showing up every day. Word got out, and it was insane. They went through it, and it was, just a few of us, and we did it. And then the next year, you were a senior scarer. That's what he called you. And, he would put it out, and he said, hey, I want to have auditions. I want to put it out there. So he'd advertise it and ask anyone that wanted to go, right? And then we would sit in, and then they would come in and tell us their experience or why they want to do it, what drives them. It wasn't, and we didn't advertise money or anything like that. It was, we wanted people to come because they had the passion, the drive to make this, up there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did from that point on. We just continued to sit in and talk to scares. And when, we talk about like, all right, this person definitely fits in. They definitely meet the criteria. They have the passion, the edge, the drive. They don't just want to, jump scare.
Cuando ustedes están haciendo, te pregunto primero, ¿tú fuiste parte del proceso de casting? ¿Tú eras el que escogía o no?
Yes, I sat in because for me it was very important to ensure that the message and everything that we were sending out was kept, right? Because we started with just a handful of us, some airbrush, right? We didn't even have real kits or makeup or props or nothing. Everything was what we brought in from home, you know. So we wanted to keep that. I didn't want to have, people come in, and we had some people who were like dressed like actual like characters you see in
Ajá.
movies and stuff, and we're like, nah, nah, nah. You have to be you. Bring your character, and then eventually we started doing themes like, this year we're gonna do heavy on zombies. This year we're gonna do, heavy on this and this, and then who are you gonna be? What character do
So,
you want to
so
drive?
si por ejemplo, si ustedes en ese año están buscando el team o el topic que están trayendo es de zombie, las audiciones tenían que ser gente actuando como zombie para ustedes ver qué tipo de zombie era lo que traía.
Kind of, yeah. Like, how did it fit into it, right? So
Okay.
basically, the story you brought to the plantation. Like for me, my first one was I was the head farmer, right? I was a dead farmer who walked you in, right? Because for us, you came through a large metal tunnel and then you got briefed, right? We had one security guard. He said, no touching, they won't touch you,
Okay.
no hitting, don't run, if da 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 da, if you're scared, you can leave now through this side exit, right? There, I would meet them at the gate. I would come up and I'm the first face they see. And I'm
Okay.
just, at that time, airbrush completely white, right? I had a white T-shirt on with red like blood handprints scraped across from people like dying and dragging on them. I had a huge metal chain wrapped around my hand, and I had a straw hat, right? And I just looked like a dead scarecrow farmer. I was stuffed with like all kinds of scarecrow stuffing, and the security guard was like, "Oh, this is the caretaker of the grounds. Be clear to follow him and his rules." And I would walk you up to the first house, and I would disappear so smoothly. And now everyone's like, "We're
Now
by
you're by
ourselves." Like,
yourself.
yeah, what do we
Yeah,
do? And
that
then if they would
feeling.
try to double back or go backwards, many other creatures and sounds would just come scare them, where they have to go forward because it's way scarier going back than
Wow.
just to go through.
Te pregunto, George, como actor que fuiste de casas de horror por mucho tiempo,
Hmm.
porque tú sabemos que hay casas de horror que donde permiten tocar a la gente.
Yeah.
Hay casas de horrores y personalmente las que me gustan son las que no tocan.
Yep.
Yo pienso que, yo pienso que para tú llegar a asustar a alguien no necesitas tener que tocar. Hay muchos factores que se involucran donde puede. ¿Qué tú piensas de eso?
Absolutely. I personally do not like the ones that you have to touch. You don't have to touch to
Exacto,
create that
exacto,
effect. We
exacto.
had the hype, the drive, right? So for
Sí,
me, it's all about how you put it out. So
yeah,
in that one, right? So leading up to where you would stop, there's a metal tunnel. There's a metal tunnel. Everyone's lined up on the outside of the metal tunnel, all outside.
okay.
And then the group would walk through, right? So you had the guys at the front of the tunnel, they would shine the light to tell you to go. But when they shine the light, I'm standing in the middle. You just see a glimpse.
Ah.
Whoop, and you're like, whoa,
Sí,
what's that?
yo puedo verlo. Espero que todos ustedes también lo estén imaginando, porque yo lo puedo ver. Yo siento estar allí y ver lo que tú dices del flashlight y de momento, wow, ahí hay alguien.
And
Este,
the thing is, you would do it, right? If I'm standing in the middle, you would see me. But if I stand up across and up with my body like this, you don't see. You just see straight
ajá.
down the tunnel. So it's like, quick flash, there's something there. There's something there. And like, what are you talking about? And they would put the flashlight, and then you don't see me. And they're like, all right, maybe nothing's there. Or sometimes I would just come running down with my chain, and since it's all metal, you
Yeah.
just see sparks dragging behind me, and you see a silhouette
Ah, that's
of
great.
me.
That's
Or
great.
sometimes what I would do is at the very end there was two perches, right? There was a pumpkin on this end, and then on here I would just sit there facing away and not move. Not move the whole time while they're getting told, don't touch, they won't touch you. And people were like, oh. And then as soon as the guy would say, okay, it's time to follow your caretaker, and they're like, who? And they're like, he's like, him. I would turn and they're like, oh my God, he's been there the whole time?
Exacto.
Or I would just be against the wall, right? And as the crowd walks through, I would step in with them and walk with them, not knowing. Half of them don't even know. And the guy would be like, how many of you guys? And they're like, oh, 6 of us today. And he's like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And they're like, 7? And then they look around like, oh my God. I didn't have to touch nothing. I gave them the effect. They felt calm. They felt good. And then we had long lines, right? So everyone's waiting a long time. So we had intermissions because it gets hot and we're all geared up. We have to take a break. We need water, right? But to hype the crowd up, we'd run out, like they turn off all the lights at the whole place. It's completely dark. And we just come running out the tunnel, all of us dressed up. And half the people don't see because then they turn on the lights and you just have monsters everywhere. And they're like, holy snap. You know, but that effect, right? Because you get everyone. You got people who are terrified. You got the tough guys who are like, oh, I'm not scared of you. And those are the best because when they come through, I remember, right? I remember those guys, I'm not scared of you. I'll beat you up. They come through. There was one guy. This guy had to be probably 6'3", 6'4", big guy.
Yeah.
Just roar, yelling down. He's like, oh, I'm not scared. And over there, they do like, chee-hoo. Like, have you seen Moana?
Sí.
You know how he goes, chee-hoo, whatever, right?
Sí.
He did that. I did the same thing while I was in the tunnel. And he stops.
What?
And doesn't walk. Doesn't want to come through. Even the biggest guy who was brave and all.
Sí,
so you see it all. You don't need to. I had people who, when they got to the beginning, because it's a gate that you have to walk through, when I ran up to the gate or walked into the gate or just merged into the crowd, which is so scared, that didn't come through. There was people, and I felt bad because there was some parts where I was like, but I made people pee themselves because they were so scared. There was a guy who literally did number 2 on himself and had to leave because he was so scared. Yeah, literally. And it was just, I didn't have to touch. I didn't have to scream.
Yo pienso que yo estoy completamente de acuerdo. Yo pienso que no hay que tocar para llegar a hacer eso. Pero tú mencionaste algo bien importante que has dejado saber en toda esta conversación que ha estado súper interesante y que me abre tantas y tantas preguntas más sobre que y tú me dices si estás de acuerdo conmigo o no desde tu punto de vista como scare actor, pero las casas, ya sea un Hellride, ya sea un farm o una casa tradicional o cualquiera que sea el venue que se está usando para hacer el attraction, debería tener una historia. Eso es un punto importante, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's why he chose the plantation. He didn't choose a random spot because it already had a story behind it, right? Because the big thing, superstitions and spirits and everything, you know, same like our culture and the Filipino culture and all that, they believe in all that, right? We're down the descendants of the same line, right? The Spaniards also mingled with the Filipinos, and that's how you got it. So that's why they have similar dishes. So their beliefs are pretty similar when it comes to that. So the plantation already had it, and a lot of it was not just there, just like the sugarcane fields and everything over there. They firmly believed that the spirits still inhabited the land. So it already had its own. We didn't have to do anything. All we did was just, we were there. We added on to the story.
Tú le añadías. Y te pregunto, esto es algo que tal vez quienes son fanáticos del horror como tú tal vez lo han pensado, tal vez hay gente que dice, no, pero estoy loco. Pero yo siempre he tenido como esta sensación o manera de pensar cada vez que voy a una casa de horror o visito alguna atracción de horror que yo digo, a los actores les tiene que dar miedo, yo asumo, porque tú estás en este lugar oscuro donde tú estás sí vestido de lo que sea, de este demonio, bla, bla, bla. Entonces, pues vamos a tomar de ejemplo una casa de horror común, una casa, like a woodhouse, bla, 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 y el actor está ahí. Entonces, es de estas casas donde entran grupos de 6, un ejemplo. So, tú asustaste el grupo de seis, esto y lo otro, pero cuando tú estás esperando al otro grupo, tú estás solo ahí escuchando
So
todo.
yeah, so for us, right? So we used to mess around a lot, right? So because we used to roam around a lot, the goal was also to try to scare each other, right? Because the
Oh,
place was
okay.
haunted. Like you would go through
Wow.
by the end of the night, it'd be crazy because we'd be sitting there and like we're getting undressed and we're just talking
Yeah.
about it, and they'd be like, "Hey, man, who was that? Oh, what was it? We had names for the houses, each one.
Okay.
They were like, "Who's at the old lady house?" And I was like, "Well, that's where I was at." They're like,
What?
they were like, "Were you there like at this time?" And I was like, "No, I was walking a group." They're like, "No, don't lie. Like somebody came through because you cut through some of the houses before, like it'd be the old lady house and then an open house." And they're like, "It was really weird because the door opened up, we heard footsteps, but there was no one there." And I was like, "Nah, man, they already went through." And they were like, "Don't play with me." So we had
Wow.
that, right? We had instances where we may have had some real encounters of stuff that we couldn't explain.
Wow.
So that we would add on. So we would mess with each other. We would try to scare
Sí,
each
sí,
other
sí,
all the
sí.
time. But at the same time, like you, for me, when I got ready, sometimes I would like some years I would tell Noah like I don't even want to see what you got like what you think for me, like surprise me. Like the picture I sent you,
Ujú.
I didn't know what I was until he took the picture and showed me.
O sea, tú te dejabas que te vistieran y te prepararan y entonces ahí pues tú veías qué era lo que te ibas a hacer.
Yep. Yep.
Wow, yo creo
A
que eso es
lot of
interesante, pero tú sabes que yo creo que también demuestra la capacidad que tienen que tener algunos actores. Muchas veces no, las personas no entienden y yo estoy de acuerdo con que hay que hacer casting porque se necesita gente para
yeah, that it took that and the reason he allowed that with me and some of the other actors was because he's seen it, right? Because it's
Exacto,
not easy.
yo digo que tú le debiste haber demostrado a él la capacidad de actor que tú tenías y de pasión, porque yo pienso que es una combinación, tú tienes que tener pasión por eso. Yo pienso que no cualquier actor, y yo no sé de actuación, pero me atrevería a decir que no cualquier actor, porque ese actor puede también trabajar un papel de horror. Y yo pienso que es una combinación de que te encante el horror y lo que estás haciendo, y que sepas rápido como
There's
que captar que tú eres y cómo hacerlo.
yeah, you develop, you grow into it, and before you know, like man, I tell you, there's times where I would wear it home. I wouldn't even take it off, right? Because we put it on, and I'm driving home at 3 in the morning, scaring people on the way home. Just could you imagine? You're like out and about, or going to work or from work at 3 in the morning. You pull up at a red light and you turn. You're like,
Exacto,
and
exacto,
it's
exacto,
just
sí, sí, sí.
but it was it's scary and challenging. I don't know, especially, and I wanted that challenge because by the end of the night, I developed who I was
Ujú.
because voice, personality. Sometimes I didn't even use words. It was a lot. Sometimes I just grunted, or it was just a laugh, or it was just what worked the most for that one in general was silence. I didn't scream, I didn't yell, I didn't use a voice, I didn't talk. I was just a silent character.
Una pregunta que te tengo, George,
Hmm.
eh, tú le recomendarías, te tengo esa primero, que tú le recomendarías a la gente que le guste el horror que lo intente en algún momento, que sean scare actors, y te voy a explicarles por qué hago la pregunta, porque pueden haber personas como tú que les encanta el horror,
Hmm.
y a la misma vez le gusta el horror desde la parte de ser espectador como el horror desde la parte de ser un scare actor. Yo trabajé en Disney en 2011 y personas que trabajaron conmigo en Disney, que yo conocí primera mano,
Hmm.
ellos les gustó trabajar, pero ellos no podían ver a los actores detrás de los... Por favor, si niños están viendo esto en este momento, tápenle los oídos algo, porque voy a decir algo que va a impactar. Pero los characters de Disney son personas que están bajo un costume. So, yo
Hmm.
tenía compañeros de trabajo que a ellos no les gustaba, no podían ver las personas porque decía que le quitaba la magia. La pregunta es, como scare actor, a una persona que le guste el horror, el trabajar en una casa de horror le quita como la magia, o tú crees que en ese caso no es lo mismo, sino que es distinto?
I think it's a mix, really. I think for me, I I set the standard so high. We were doing so well. We still are. You know, they're the number one scare house in Hawaii. You know, and
Okay.
then we started getting big. Travel Channel, all these people they
Ujú.
would come, right? And I don't think it was so much that it took it away. It was more like I would go through as a critic everywhere else I went. I
Sure.
would go through like I think Jasmine was with me, my sister. She came, she wanted to do the Haunted Plantation, I remember. And then when she got older, it was the one in the mall. They did like a little, walk through one,
Yeah.
right? And she's like, I want to go. And I was like, okay, we'll go. And I think Jasmine was like 11 at the time. And we'd walk through and she's just, and I'm walking, right? Guide me. I don't want to look. And I'm like, Jasmine, it's okay. She's like, how do you know? And like, I said, open your eyes. Watch. I'm going to make it non-scary for you. And she's like, okay. And we walked through and it was really cheesy. And it was just, I was like, someone's in that corner. This is going to pop out. I became desensitized because the standard that I had because of the show and everything we put on, these fake props that pop out or, these guys who are, you can see them standing against the wall and they're like waiting to get really low. You're like, there's no jump
Mhm.
scares, buddy. You're not scary. It doesn't look real. Cause like I said, we had what we had, right? So a lot of that until we were able to get the props and know, we made the money to go, it was airbrushed.
Mhm.
My face was airbrushed. It was my face with, you know, how was it? All it was I was airbrushed white, right? I had a more whiter than I am now, but white, and my lips were airbrushed black, and then like the veins on my neck
Ajá.
and arms
Ujú.
were airbrushed blue to look like I froze to death. That's it.
Ok.
And a straw hat, some jumpers, some what are those, coveralls or something like that. The
Los tirantes.
Yeah, and a white T-shirt that had some blood stains on it. That's it. So it was me. There was no scary costume, no
Sí,
mask,
no
no.
había Protex o nada de eso añadido a la cara para.
Now don't get me wrong. When we got those things to add on, because one year I was the first year I was the farmer. The next one I was. You seen Jeepers Creepers?
Oh, sí.
That's how he made me with the nose.
What?
Yep. It was a prosthetic nose that came out with the chin, and it just made the face look like the Jeepers Creepers guy.
So, pregunta que te tengo, y ya estamos culminando porque lo que vamos a hacer es que vamos, en una ocasión cuando tú tengas tiempo también nos vamos a reunir de nuevo a continuar conversación, pero entonces más
Hmm.
profunda sobre los efectos y detrás bastidores de las casas de misterio y todo. Este, ¿Todavía hay casas de misterio que vas y te asusta o mientras más experiencia tienes trabajando ya no te asusta tanto? Depende como
Um,
espectador.
I, I don't know. It all depends because there's uh when I came back to Hawaii, I had gone on a deployment, so I had missed out on. I was able to go through the early walkthrough, but I couldn't be there to work it one year. And the early walkthrough, it still gave me the chills,
Ujú.
right? Because it still they were so good. I mean, as long as it's not too cheesy and like they have the passion and they like it and they feel it. If you could tell which ones are like, oh, this is gonna be good, or oh, this one's not gonna be so good. As long as you still get that, I still get the hair on my back and neck to stand. I'm like, oh, that was good,
That's good. That's good. ¿Tú piensas que las personas que visitan las casas de misterio deben de ir con la mentalidad abierta de que me voy a asustar o hacer como hacen algunas personas que dicen, no, yo sé que te embuste, yo voy? ¿Qué tú piensas sobre eso?
Well, I mean, I think that's what helped us was because the plantation already had the background, it made it a little easier because
Ujú.
people already knew. Because normally, you just drive by and it's a plantation, and I
Sí.
mean, how many kids and teenagers go on tours of a farm. You
Exacto.
know, and only the old community knew about that, right? And they would avoid it. So you just drive by, and it's just this place that has like a bunch of fences, and it's locked up. Which really, you could take tours on a daily basis. People would just wouldn't go. So
Mm.
here's this creepy old place that's combined with. It has so it's a plantation where everyone lived, but they also were buried there. So it was a plantation with a graveyard. So you're like, I thought that was a
Mm.
graveyard the whole time. What do you mean we can go
Right,
through
right,
it?
right.
So I mean, the scare factor is there. Everyone can say, I'm brave, I'm scared, but there's always that one in the very back of your mind, that little small kid that still runs when you turn off the light, that still
Sí.
questions if the dark corner over there is it's
Exacto.
darker than the rest of them.
Y
You
vamos,
know, it's still
exacto, ya tú sabes, y vamos a hablar de eso. Yo te voy a invitar para una futura ocasión. Vamos a hablar lo mismo. Estamos hablando ahora de cómo es detrás de las máscaras para un scare actor. En esa próxima, si tú no tienes problemas, te vamos a hablar entonces de esos factores que se involucran para asustar. Así que si está bien contigo, lo vamos a cuadrar. Lo digo aquí, viene un segundo video.
yeah,
¿Está bien?
yeah.
Ok. Antes de culminar, George, no quiero que nos vayamos sin que cuentes la experiencia que tuviste con el niño, lo que
Uh-huh.
mencionamos al
Mm-hmm.
principio, un background pequeño. Josh y yo estábamos hablando sobre pues, su experiencia cuando él fue actor para Casa de Misterio por más de 8 años, lo hizo, eso tiene una experiencia amplia y me hizo la pequeña historia de cómo él hizo un approach a un niño que estaba bien asustado. Es algo que es bien importante y cuando él lo cuente yo voy a decir por qué. Soy George, por favor, si nos puedes contar brevemente la historia, cómo fue que tú hiciste la approach al nene.
Yeah, so you get many people come in, and it was this one group. It was this one lady. She had, it was probably like 4 kids, 4 or 5 kids. One was her son, and the rest were the friends, right? And he was trying to be brave and look brave in front of his friends.
Right.
And really, his friends were scared too, but they just did. You can see it, but he couldn't see it, right? And I ran up to the fence because all you hear is my chain, and then cuckoo, and next thing you know, my face is right there, and I'm like face to face with him, and he's just like terrified and just starts crying. I don't want to go. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And then like his friends like kind of tease him a little bit, and I seen it, and I was like, so what I did was I wasn't I wasn't by myself. So he starts crying. His friends start making fun of him. So I go and I wave, right? Wave means, hey, whatever it is. Usually for us, when we do a double wave, it's, hey, we got some tough guys here. Let's really scare them, right?
Oh,
So now the rest of the monsters are in. They're coming. And I lean in. I lean in really close to the boy, right? And he's like terrified, shaking. And like, I go one knee and I lean in close. And he doesn't want to look at me. He's just staring forward. I say, I lean in close. I'm like, hey, buddy. I'm just a normal person, just like you. Don't worry about it. This still scares me too. It's okay to be scared.
wow.
Don't look tough in front of your friends because I promise you they're going to be more scared than you are by the end of this. And he was like, okay. Like, he was like, he nodded his head, but wouldn't stare. He kept staring forward. And then they started going in, and he went in. And as he walked through, I went with the crowd. Right? So when monsters would come in and try to scare him extra, I wave him off. So now he felt comfortable. He felt like, okay, not all monsters are crazy like this, and I'm protected by the lead monster.
Exacto. Se
So
sentía,
then,
no, ahora sí.
yep, halfway through, he was like, I'm okay, I'm good.
Sí.
And then they went around, and I met them at the end. And of course, all his little friends that were brave and made fun of him were so scared, and he was laughing. And I said, and I gave him a
Great.
fist bump, and he rolled out. It's, I'm not, you know, it's not enjoyment to like I'm not trying to terrorize someone, you know. I'm not trying to instill that, you know, complete fear of I can't move. It's I'm trying to trigger the adrenaline you get for the excitement portion, you know. Yeah, you're going to get some that are scared, but I didn't need to ruin his experience for the rest of his time. You know, and I seen that kid every time after that. Even so,
That's great.
there was kids that I scared, and when I
Perfecto.
came back years later, they were
Perfecto.
working at the plantation, and
That's
they said,
good.
"Hey, I remember you. I know you. You scared me when I was little, and now this is why I work here because I
That's
wanted
good.
to be a scarer."
Escucha, yo creo para mí, en mi opinión bien personal, y las personas acá escribirán que ellos piensan sobre esto, pero yo pienso que es excelente. Pues yo pienso que si nosotros queremos, por ejemplo, tú tienes tu niña y Josh tiene su bebé que tiene 1 año y medio, yo tengo mi nene que tiene 4 años, si nosotros estamos apasionados con el horror y queremos que nuestros hijos se apasionen con esto, hay una línea bien fina sobre que se apasionen y que le tomen tanto y tanto miedo que se vuelve un pánico.
Yep.
Si eso llega a pasar, pues entonces ya ellos no van a ser fan del horror, al contrario,
Uh
van a
huh.
decir yo no quiero ver esto, yo no.
That and that's why with her, like especially, right? We don't teach her that fear to be scared of things. We teach her to be
Exacto,
curious and embrace it.
exacto. Yo soy de los que piensa que cuando uno va a este tipo de atracciones es bueno ir con la mente abierta, me voy a asustar y no ir con ese bloque de, no, estos son personas y todo, pero sabiendo que al final de cuentas no hay nada que te vaya a hacer daño ahí, para que tú puedas tener un miedo hasta cierto punto, que el miedo no pase a pánico y no vaya, más en los niños. Cuando Josh me contó esta historia, para mí me voló la cabeza. Yo creo que fue fenomenal que él haya hecho eso, porque como escucharon de él mismo, este niño volvió años después y algunos niños se han vuelto hasta actores ahí cuando crecen un poco más, porque la experiencia fue una experiencia buena y no llegó a ser un pánico. Ahora, lo que Josh y yo hablamos antes de esta entrevista era la parte de cuando él rompe carácter o se sale del personaje, por decirlo en español, en momentos como este, si él lo hacía enfrente de la gente o no, y él me indicó que no, que él lo hacía en ese específico momento con esa persona, ese niño.
Because to everyone else, I'm just really close here in his ear. They don't know what I'm saying. They can't hear
Exacto,
me.
y eso es bien importante porque no es que él se dejó ver y delante de todo el mundo él habló con su voz, no, 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 él fue directamente a este niño, que es un niño, no es un adulto, que estaba muy asustado y le hizo el acercamiento de esa manera que yo creo que es beneficioso para eso, para que ese niño sea hoy día tal vez un fanático del horror y no sea una persona que le paniquea el horror y no quiere saber de eso. Así que
It's
gracias por esa
full
historia, yo creo
circle
que es
because they
fenomenal.
did it for me.
Exacto. Yo creo que es fenomenal. Sí, eso es importante. George mencionó al principio de la entrevista que a él le pasó eso cuando pequeño. Y hoy día ya ven, una persona que le encanta el horror eh, y ha trabajado como actor por más de 8 años en una de las, si no la mejor de Hawái, que se llama el Haunted
Plantation.
Plantation. Yo creo que dije Farm ahorita, su disculpe.
Está bien.
Dos últimas cosas y con esto cerramos esta y seguimos en la otra. Una, ¿tuvieron alguna situación donde alguna persona dio un ataque, le dio algún tipo de mareo o algo? Y cómo eso lo resolvieron y después de eso, o cómo el Haunted Plantation trabaja con eso, si es que han tenido esas situaciones. Y cerramos con qué tú le dirías, qué adicional a todo lo que hemos hablado, tú le dirías a aquellos fanáticos del horror como nosotros que están buscando trabajar en algún momento en alguna atracción como esta.
So if we had situations like that, so we had in positions, we had like more actual personnel, like so Noah, like we had crew, we had stage crew essentially throughout the whole situation. So in every general area and for the most part the houses, there was stage crew there. So if something were to happen, they were all in radio communication. They all had that, so to be like, bloop, bloop, hey, we have this. You know, we had someone who
Okay.
passed out, or someone is, having an attack, or, someone doesn't want to continue on, right? And then they would come over, and because it was small groups, we were able to isolate it, and there was different paths in order to leave without
Okay.
breaking the effect of the whole everything else. At most, what will happen is you have a situation in one of the houses, they radio it across, and we would stop groups from coming in, so no one would come up behind them. It's a
Okay.
love hate because ideally you want to work at the one that you enjoy the most, but then it might take away from the effect because now you went to the
Exacto,
best one.
exacto.
So I would say challenge yourself. Get one that's in between, one that's, oh, this has some scare factor, but it's a little cheesy. And then you join in, you see if they're hiring, go, and that cheesy, you replace that cheesy with your skill, your push, and you become. Because eventually what happened was, what Noah started doing was everyone was really good. So as an incentive to step the bar up, he started going through the crowd and giving people special tickets. These special ticketed people would come out and rate their experience. Hey, this guy really scared me. This portion really scared me. And then Noah would keep track. And at the end of it, you would get a bonus. He'd give you a
Okay,
cash
good,
bonus
good, good,
for
good.
being the top three scarers. It was 300, 200, 100.
That's all.
Extra dollars, right? Because you made that experience. You made it that much better. We sold out all the time, but I would definitely say anyone could be a part of it. It doesn't take much. You don't need much. Like I said, we did some airbrushes, like literally simple little makeup kit from like the 5.99 kits you can do. You color up your face and call it a day. Even now, the prosthetic masks that they have are really good. With some spirit gum, you're good. You don't even need a full one. So there's one now that I saw in Party City today. We were looking for costumes for the baby, and there's one mask. It's probably like $20. This thing is, it feels real. You open
Mm-hmm.
your mouth, it moves. It looks like a wolf. Simple. If you're not completely comfortable or talented in doing all that, you could just do that. Just simple. Start off simple, and then grow. At the end of the day, it's you embrace that character. When I put that costume on, the one that you saw, I wasn't Josh. I wasn't a service member. I was an embodiment, a zombie version of like Pennywise the clown, right? I had the whole clown suit. I was dead and decaying. I had the bloody bear. And the thing about that character was that bear, I got it. I got it from Walmart. $5. You would press it and it would talk like a little kid and then turn into an evil, it would
Ah,
hang show, and it would say mean things. And all my character persona, that's Chael. That's Chael. My character persona was following what the bear did, what the bear said. It would say, "Come play with me. Let's play. Let's be friends." And then it would say mean things, and then that's when I would come out with a mean presence
right,
because
right,
the
right.
bear told me to do it. Didn't take much. I didn't have to
Grandioso.
speak, didn't have to make any voices, nothing. I let the bear
Perfecto.
do the work.
Perfecto. Bueno, George, gracias, mano. De verdad que esto ha sido súper interesante. Vamos a hacer otra, ¿verdad?
Yep,
Vamos a hacer
absolutely.
otra donde vamos a hablar más a profundidad sobre los factores que hay involucrado en un haunted house. Tal vez podemos hablar en esa otra, la preparación que tú tienes que hacer antes de que las luces, como decir antes de que vaya la play
Yeah, it
start
was
playing.
the setup was definitely, if we opened at 9, everyone was there probably 2 o'clock.
Me imagino que ahora antes, o todo eso lo vamos a hablar en la otra, vamos a ir al más profundo, pero fue maravilloso ver cómo es la visión de alguien que trabajó, por decirlo así, behind the mask. ¿Tú tienes algunas redes sociales que te puedan seguir, George?
The
La
Killing
persona,
Joke
The
on
Killing Joke.
Instagram. Yep. The Joker is a big one for me, right? He's a different persona. He's a he can take on many forms, many faces, and just his personality, right? That's what it is.
En
So
Instagram.
DA, so DA Killing Joke.
Ok, DA Killing Joke. So, DA Killing Joke lo pueden seguir en Instagram. Y obviamente Nights of Horror, como dije al principio, Nights con ese al final, Noches of Horrors, de horrores, con ese al final también en Instagram. Gracias, Josh, nuevamente.
De nada.
Suscríbanse a mi página, Nights of Horrors, en YouTube, Nights of Horror, Instagram. Vamos a tener también el link del Haunted Plantation para el que quiera visitar la página y ver todo eso, buscar más información. Y nos vamos a ver con Josh próximamente en la continuación de esta conversación excelente que es de lo que nos encanta y a él le apasiona también. Gracias, Josh, de verdad que sí. Y nada, mucho horror, Nights of Horror.